Okay, we should be set.
Thank you, Summer. Thank you, everyone. We are now at our regular city council meeting for February 23rd, 2021. I will call this meeting to order. Summer, please provide us with a roll call attendance, please.
Okay. We have Mayor Emily Niehaus. We have council members Kaylin Jones, Karen Guzman-Newton, Mike Duncan, Ronnie Durestery, and Tawny Knudsen Boyd. We have Carly Castle, Assistant City Manager, Chuck Williams, City Engineer, Joel Linares, City Manager, and that looks like I did have Lori Simonson, City Attorney.
Thank you so much. We are now in section 3, citizens to be heard. We are receiving public comments by phone and online through Zoom. Citizens are limited to 2 minutes for comments. We also are accepting written comments as considered for the citizens to be heard portion of the electronic meeting, where forms can be filled out. Summer, to this point, how many have we received?
I didn't receive any written forms for this meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So we will go back to the phone and online through Zoom, and it looks like we do have a Christy Williams in the Zoom Brady Bunch with us. Christy, welcome. And you are up. Thank you for joining us this evening. Christy, I cannot hear you. Maybe say something. So words? Okay. Actually, you're just muted now.
Am I good? Thumbs
yes,
up?
You're good.
Christy,
I cannot hear you.
Well,
Maybe say something.
I am
Words?
unmuted and going loud. Will this work? Can you hear me?
Actually, you're just muted now. We can hear you. What you want to do is stop YouTube.
Oh, great. Okay. Oh my God, that's the weirdest thing. That's weirder even than radio. Out I go. Hello, America. Back. Hello. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Well, I just want to thank you so much for taking a minute to hear an update on Moab Art Trails, the public art program Grand County embraced upon its inception at the Colorado Riverway Bike and Pedestrian Bridge in 2017. Last week, we were dismayed and shocked to learn that vandals had harmed 3 and possibly 4 of the public's artworks from the extended 2020 exhibition. The combined value of the art in question is $30,000. And the good news, and there's a bunch of it, is that upon examination of the damage and close discussion with the artists, we know that the art can and will be repaired. And to finish out this extraordinary exhibition during a pandemic in typical Moab style, and that's with resilience and some durability. The coverage agreement between Moab City and Moab Art Trails means that the program can continue and the art will be repaired. And the artists, for their part, have responded with great kindness and trust in spite of the damage to their works. We've been working closely with them to facilitate repair. And, we want to ensure that that trust continues to grow and that the artists feel safe to show their works in Moab as they see the leadership of the area and the community respond with such encouraging care and concern. We as an organization remain undaunted. That's the main message. And with continued support, we'll respond with more art and more beauty. Moab City and Moab Art Trails are scheduled for a meeting this week, tomorrow, in fact, to do a little intake and mitigation planning. So you'll know more soon. And as you probably know, the city of Moab has graciously stepped up with a reward for information leading to the arrest of the responsible parties. And an anonymous donor with a gigantic heart has pledged to double that reward amount. So $6,000, and people have been just responding uniformly with kind of outrage and sadness, and it wants answers, the community does. It's also kind of encouraging in this way, you know. Moab City Police continue in their investigation of the event, and business owners in the downtown district have been really interested in seeing, you know, whoever was involved come to some kind of justice, providing investigators with any existing security footage. I don't know of it, but maybe we find out more if any information leading to the arrest actually happens. But what, you know, the night that vandals tore through Center and Main Street, toppling art and strewing trash cans in what can only be seen as an insult to the public sphere, put many business owners kind of on edge. They were deeply concerned, saying, well, you know, it could easily have been a storefront window. So we take it all very seriously, don't we? And the fact that the community has taken this vandalism personally, that they know it's public, in other words, it's their art in their space that has been harmed, is noteworthy, I think, and speaks to the collective ownership of our shared spaces and the success of, you know, the goodness public art can bring. I also wanted to thank you for your early and ongoing support of public art in Grand County, as it's been embraced like this by residents and visitors as a welcome improvement to our cultural hub. So as we go forward in 2021 with one of the few COVID-safe cultural offerings available to visitors and residents scheduled for October of this year, we just close by thanking you from the heart for everything you do to make Moab a more livably beautiful place. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Christy. Thanks for zooming in tonight. Okay. Are there any other citizens to be heard, Summer?
We do not have anyone else in the waiting room at this point.
Okay. Thank you so much. Then we will move on from Section 3, citizens to be heard, to Section 4, administrative reports. We'll start 4.1 with city manager updates. Joel, I was wondering if you could just speak a little more to the follow-up of what Christy was just speaking to.
I
already were planning on reporting on it, but since it's all fresh, might as well kick off with that.
I was going to open there. I want to thank Christy and Art Trails for the work they do for our community and how amazing it makes downtown. And with those pieces not being on center, it feels like a completely different street. I met with law enforcement yesterday and reviewed what's going on with the case. They do have leads. You know, we have a good idea of where we're going with this investigation, and hopefully it bears fruit. It's too early to say yet, but we have some solid leads and we're feeling really good about where this is going. And we want to thank the community and the surrounding businesses for all the help that they have been and the evidence that they've provided us that has allowed us to continue pushing forward this investigation. And I want to thank the community who have responded to the reward and who have come forward and shared information that they've had. So nothing to quite report yet, but definitely still working towards it. I want to reiterate that Moab City is dedicated to art trails and providing this service to our community. And there was not one point from the morning that this happened that the city thought twice about being a member of this agreement and continuing our work with art trails and whatever it took to make the situation right and can make it so the program could continue. So we won't be dissuaded and we won't be dismayed from continuing to provide public art. It's important to our community, and it was a sad day. It was a hard morning and everyone was really upset. And in those moments, all you can do is keep going forward and show that your resilience is going to overcome ignorance. So that's where we're at. And I can't thank Christy enough for how great they've been through this process, and Lori for doing a lot of research to figure out what our options are to cover the cost and make sure everything's taken care of going forward. So there's quite a few things. I'm going to try and be quick so we don't take a ton of time. I know I'm getting a lot of, I don't want to say complaints, but comments about dirt patches in the public roads. That's because it's winter and we have a lot of old infrastructure here in the city, and we have a lot of sewer lines and water lines break throughout the year. If it happens 8 months of the year, we dig them up, fix them, we go get some asphalt and we patch it. If it happens December through March, the batch plant for asphalt is closed and we have to wait for the hot patch to get brought back online before we can put asphalt back down. So it's not that we're just not patching these big holes you see around town. It's we're waiting for the right equipment to come online so we can fix them and fix them right. So you'll see dirt holes in the road for probably another 2 weeks before we're eligible and able to go out and get those fixed with asphalt in them and get them done right. So if you've seen those, that's what's going on. City Hall is still open to the public as far as for business. We are working towards opening our doors to the public. We're shooting for a March 2nd opening with the new guidelines that are coming from the state. That will look like the front door will be unlocked for people to come in and interact with the Treasurer's Department and pay bills. There will still be a stop at that point, and we're still asking people to make appointments for other offices and to set up those visits. But the door.
Can I just interrupt you for a second and just say City Hall has been open through the entire pandemic. What we haven't done is unlocked the front door so that we have been asking for appointments, that we have visits by appointments, right? But we have been open the whole time.
Absolutely.
We don't want to have any confusion that we haven't.
If we haven't been open, I don't know what I've been doing. I've worked more this year than any year in my life. So.
And every department, every subsequent department also has been open, and there's been a human of every department in City Hall every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Monday through Friday.
Absolutely. So
Just been by appointment only.
Definitely been functioning throughout. We had prepared to do this a while ago, and then we had the winter hit and we had the surge hit in about November, and everything got raised to high and we rolled back, and we've kind of been waiting to get through the winter season and get through the surge from the vacations and the holidays, and we're getting to the backside of that. Hopefully we keep moving in the right direction. It seems like we are. The cases are falling. The assessment that the state uses to determine whether or not we're low, moderate, or high, we're still in the high category, but 2 of the 3 have to remain in certain numbers in order for us to remain high of the categories they use. And we're on the verge of being out of 2 of those areas. So we're hoping to fall into the moderate range here pretty quick. And everyone still needs to wear their mask. Masks will still be required in City Hall. And they should follow the mask order that's been passed by Southeastern Utah Health Department and Grant County. So it's not a time to let our guards down, and that's not what we're doing. We're just trying to continue to provide a level of service to our community that helps them and helps us to meet that standard. Our finance director position, we are going to post it here in the next few days. We're in the process of working with a candidate, but that's not bore any fruit for us. So we're in the process now of going and opening that position up, and we're going to try and start getting that filled. In the meantime, Danny and I and Carly are working really hard to be the best finance directors for Moab City that we can be. I sent you guys all an email earlier that had our February numbers in it. Share my screen here real quick. And I don't know if you noticed, but we brought back the Smart Sheets view. Everyone tends to like that. So we've gone back to that. You can see this is our fiscal year 21, July through February. You can see there that we're about 3% higher on revenue this year than we were last year at this time. And so that's good news. That's great news. We're 10% higher than the year before last. So the resort community, as you can see there on screen, is about 6% higher. You can see here in the graph next to it, it was only the first 2 months of this year, July and August, that we lost revenue in resort community tax. And if you recall, this is 2 months offset. So that would actually be May, and that would actually be June. And if you recall, in May, we were closed. And in June, we started to reopen. And that's, you can see that here in the transient room tax, where it actually took 4 months for us to bounce back. If you recall, when we opened up in June and July, the hotels were only at about half capacity. So even though they reopened, they weren't being allowed to fully operate. And so those numbers stayed low. We're still about 14% down in the transient room tax. It's about $140,000 difference in that number from where it was a year previous. But that said, with the resort tax being up 6%, sales tax being up 7%, and the highway tax being up 6%, overall, when you combine those numbers, we're at about 103% of where we were last year, which is what that top one showed. And so revenue's good as far as where we've been in the past. And, you know, you can see that sales tax number, it's mind blowing. The TRT number as well. You know, this one here, 64,000 for the month of December. Last year we were at 39. I mean, it's crazy to me how much that's going up. From what I can see from the research I've done, it's the first time we've ever broke 60,000 in TRT in the month of December. So sales revenue, tax revenue is looking really, really well, which is a lead into a discussion on this spring. It's going to be crazy. So we're under the same types of rules and restrictions that we were under last year. City Hall and our staff, Public Works, Parks, we're all preparing for a spring that's going to be exceptionally busy. People still aren't allowed to travel internationally. They're trying to go places they can drive to pretty much locally, and we're a great destination for that. So we fully suspect this trend to continue. We fully suspect that our revenues will continue to grow over the next 4 months, and we hope everyone is prepared for a really, really busy spring. The widening is going. It was a year project, if you recall, and we started it in March of last year. And the widening pave out is supposed to be done before Easter weekend. So the highway itself is supposed to be open and operating in full capacity prior to Easter. So they're on pace to meet that year deadline that we put out. You know, at the time when we started that project was about a week and a half, 2 weeks before COVID, and we were all like really, really nervous about it being in that season, and that those 2 months ended up just getting canceled, and it may have worked out the best it could have for those 2 months. It's been a pain in the butt for the fall, because the fall was the busiest fall we've ever had, and that was right in the middle of it. But there's just no getting around having to do this project at some point. So hopefully they can get that done and get it open prior to Easter weekend, which didn't do us any favors this year, being the first weekend of April instead of a mid or a later weekend in April. It was right up front by March there, but nonetheless, that's where we're at. We've been working on budget a ton. Met with most all the departments. We're getting it squared up. It's looking decent so far. We're looking to hire a few new positions in the police department so we can get some more enforcement going. And we're looking to make some other changes in the police department going forward. And it's looking really good for that department. And the other departments have just been excellent in saving money and cost reductions. And so far, what we're looking at with Public Works, for example, it's $500,000 less than it was last year. And so some departments are going down, other departments where we're hiring more officers for law enforcement, it's going up. So where we're having savings, we're offsetting them with spending in those other areas, but we're trying to keep it pretty even right now. We'll start setting meetings with you guys, with the administration, one-on-one meetings where we can discuss it. I meet with you guys one-on-one weekly anyways, and we're going to start bringing that to your attention going forward. We're also working on the parklet stuff, coming to an actual change in the code for you guys. So that's coming your way as well. So those are the main things I have. Does anyone have any questions for me before I let Chuck and Lori talk for a minute?
Guys, do we have any information on, or that we want to share just about vaccines that you know that maybe other folks don't know?
I wish I had that secret info. I'll give you what I got. I don't know how good a secret it is. The hospital received an additional 100 vaccinations for 65 and older and those who have some pre-existing health conditions. If you would like to try and get one of those vaccinations, please contact the hospital and try and set your appointment. I know the health department is still doing them for 65 and older. I think effectively now, initially they were saying March 1, but I think that at this point just stepped up forward and said anyone who's 65 or older. The pre-existing health conditions is a designated list. You can get online and find that. It's not just, I have one, therefore I qualify. You need to make sure your pre-existing condition is on there. Other than that, the information I'm looking at, we're about 6% of those who are eligible, or the population, have been vaccinated so far as well. So it's a little number that's not growing fast. Hopefully we keep working forward and pushing it to happen quicker and can vaccinate more people more readily. So I understand that that's a supply and demand issue, and I also understand it's a manpower issue. And I know that the health department and the hospital have done nothing but everything they could do for us collectively as a community throughout this entire year. And I know they have to be exhausted. I cannot imagine being a frontline worker right now. It's all day, every day, and it's just never ending. I know the impact COVID has had on us at City Hall and what we deal with it every day in our public works and our parks, dealing with it at the sewer, and in our parks department with our bathrooms, and just here at City Hall. And we deal with it every day. And it's not with our law enforcement going out into the community. We're constantly bombing and cleaning, and it is just a mess. And we're not remotely on the front line as those other two entities are. And I just can't thank them enough for the service that they've put in, and the sacrifice that they've made, and the time that they've had to put into getting just to this point. So I can't thank them enough. And if there's anything we can do for them, we're happy to do that. So with that said, if there's no other questions, I'm gonna let Chuck take over for a minute.
I just want to say one thing about vaccines. I think what people need to understand is that they need to get on the list. So if they're eligible for the vaccine, they need to call and get on the list. Otherwise, they're going to start moving through, especially this month and next, moving through vaccinating everybody. So people just need to call and get on the list.
And to no fault of the health department or the hospital, it has been such a confusing process collectively as a country. Like, just the lack of federal leadership to get something on board to where there's a scale where everyone knows what we're doing is just, it's not their fault. They're reacting to it. And I know how they feel when this process started, and we were dealing with COVID back in March, and we were making decisions here at the city on how to deal with our interaction with the community and the services we provide and how vital they are, and how we could keep our people safe, to keep providing water and sewer and law enforcement. There was no decisions being made federally, and we were making decisions weeks and sometimes months ahead of when we were getting any guidance out of the federal or state government. And so the hospital and the health department have done great, just having to be on the front line, making decisions without guidelines or guidance. It's crazy to me how this has fallen to the absolute municipal and county levels to manage this level of a crisis. And they've just done a great job with the amount of resources they have. So. All right, Chuck.
Good evening, everyone. Just a little bit of update from the engineering department. The USU campus, the walls have started to go up. So they've been moving forward, and still looking at completion date in December of this year. The USU Waterline on Aggie Boulevard Phase 2. So remember I reported last time that we'd had that stretch of the dirt road closed because it was under construction. By this time next week, we think the construction will be completed with the water line in, and it'll be a dirt road. So a lot of people really responded and stayed off the construction site like we asked. But now the dirt road will be open again, and bicyclists and walkers, I would certainly say it'll be a nice place to go back to. Still respecting the fact that USU is under construction, but that's fenced off. But we're going to sign it that it's not going to be regularly maintained to discourage car traffic, because it's a dirt road. It's 4 inches of UBC over it. But that should be by this time next week. The transportation plans, the UDOT Southeastern Utah Regional Plan, they're shooting for a stakeholder meeting of the stakeholders next week sometime. That final draft should be coming out soon. The Uniform Transportation Plan, which is the unified transportation plan between the city and Grand County. We will plan to have an interlocal agreement on next council agenda. That, again, just as a reminder, is we applied for and got a state grant for $110,000 of state funding. The county's kicking in $25,000, and the city's going to kick in $15,000. And county council approved it last Tuesday, and we'll have it on the next council meeting with scope of work and documentation for you to review ahead of time. The bike skills park, just an update on the bathroom. The water line is in, and the sewer line work is under construction now. By the end of next week, that should be completed, and we anticipate delivery of the actual bathroom by mid-March is the closest we were able to get for a commitment from them. So with any luck, by the end of the March, that bathroom will be live and working and available. One thing I wanted to point out too, if I can share my screen here quickly, is do you see that PowerPoint slide?
Not yet, Chuck. It's all just still the Brady Bunch screen.
Okay, let me try it again. How about now? Can you see a
Yep.
roundabout? Okay, thank you.
Roundabout.
So this is the 400 North, 100 West intersection. This is the MRAC. This is Swanee Park, Mi Vida. Back in 2017, the city applied for federal funds through UDOT, the Small Urban Cities Program, and we were awarded funds for this roundabout. And the roundabout will fix this intersection, which is offset. I mean, the big problem with this intersection is we've got a mortuary built in what probably should have been right away at some point in time. And no one expects the mortuary to go away. So roundabouts are useful in what's called an offset intersection, because the right of way is so offset, with Emmett Boulevard being narrow here, then 100 West, and then 400 North here being narrower than 400 North there. But one of the things we were able to do in being successful in our application was extend the project limits down to address the drainage here, where the channel goes across 100 West and comes across the park. Here's the concrete channel. So we'll be able to mitigate that drainage. We don't know what it'll be yet. I mean, this is going to be a UDOT run project. We'll be in consultation with them on consultant selection and as project management moves forward. I just wanted to bring it up because it's a commitment of about $100,000 from the city in order to pick up about $1.5 million worth of funding from UDOT in order to put in this roundabout, which will address the traffic, because this is a high
Chuck, you're breaking
area
up.
with the
You
school.
might want to unshare your screen. Chuck,
Okay.
you're breaking up. You might want to unshare. Yeah.
Yep. Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing that I wanted to just two more things quickly is that as a part of the Highway 191 widening, they're going to have to turn off water to Lions Park on Thursday, but it should be back on board Friday. So just letting you know, Public Works is aware of it and Parks Department. And then the other thing is I had sent out the project tracking sheet. And does anyone have any questions on that? I can either try and address that now or later at another time individually, if we can help anyone, members of the council.
I think it might be helpful for us to all have a little time. And I'm assuming that we're going to talk about that at our retreat.
Yes, I think that's true. I just thought I'd ask, make sure if anybody had a hard time opening it, even if you tried. So I'm happy to wait.
Yeah. Karen
That's
wants
all I
to.
have.
Oh, Chuck, I just had a quick question. Is there going to be, with that roundabout, is there going to be connectivity to that bike path? Like how?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was purely just a concept design there, just enough to give it to something to UDOT. Yeah, we're going to have connectivity to the shared use path, the bike path. Absolutely.
That concept was pre-Emma redevelopment, correct?
Correct.
So we would
Yeah.
do a redo. Yeah. Mike?
Chuck, about a week ago, I was up on Aggie Boulevard, up past the USU campus. That road, as you know, tails off and goes quite a ways south, where there's a whole bunch of excavation work going on there. I think at Sitla property. Can you update me as what all they're building out there? They're moving a lot of dirt, I can tell you that.
Yes, so the same way that when we did Aggie Boulevard Phase 1, it's designed someday to be a 4-lane road, a parkway through there. We did the excavation for the full build out. So that Aggie Boulevard Phase 2, which is what you were up there on, where the water line went in, Sitla did the design for the 4-lane full build out. So that ultimately becomes a through road, whereas that area develops based on the land use plan that was adopted. I think it was 2012. Why that footprint's so large is, rather than go into 2 different snapshots in time and try and coordinate all the utilities, they went in and put it in all at once. And Sitla and the developer paid for that. And they went through our review process and all of that stuff. So
yeah, thank you. That explains part of it. So are they planning buildings, homes, whatever, anytime soon there?
So Sitla does have a developer on board. They went out to request for proposals last year. And in fact, that developer paid for this water line that connects to USU and ultimately to the development. And what they've told us, we haven't seen any formal submittals yet, but they've had discussions with planning and with us about where they would begin development, because they have multiple types of development. They have single family residential, they have student housing, they've got affordable housing, and they're all working on that right now. We haven't seen any formal submittals, and I don't believe Nora has either, because we touch base on this on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you. It helps.
You're welcome.
Anything else for us, Chuck?
No, thank you, and be happy to answer questions later if you have any more too.
Yeah, because you're sticking around for your agenda item. Okay. Joel, shall we move on to 4.3 or? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I was trying to find that mute button.
Actually, I was going to do the golf course update.
Yep, that's 4.3. That's you.
So I just wanted to give a quick update about the golf course, Moab Country Club. The lease agreement we entered into with them last May required a few things to be presented to the city by February 15th. And so I just wanted to update everyone. They did provide their annual financial statement and their annual operations report, which I circulated to council on February 17th. The highlights of that are that, while the golf course had to cancel some events, the year was not as much of a disaster as maybe someone had expected. So they survived the year and made a net income of $36,770.87. And per our lease agreement with them, they pay the city 1.5% of their annual profits. So by June 1, they will be providing the city a total payment of $551.56. They've also, per the lease agreement, have provided the city with their proposed fees for next year. And I notified the club president, Ross Taber, that I was going to just be presenting this quick update this evening, and that I am happy to pass along to him any questions you have about the 2021 documents that they have provided to the city. So with that, I will take any questions and happily pass them along.
I'm just going to say somebody might remember differently, but I think this might be the first year with profit. So congratulations.
Yeah, it's small, but they did a good job. So yeah.
Joel, can you speak to that? The profit margin of said golf course?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I know, having only been here 2.5 years. Prior to me, this used to be a requirement that was in their contracts that they were required to pay a percentage of their revenue. And a number of years before I got here, they had approached the city and the city had agreed to waive that requirement. So they hadn't been being required to do that. When we entered into a new agreement with them what felt like last year was this, it was mid last year, I guess. We put that provision back in there. And my understanding was it had been removed because they weren't making a profit and they weren't paying that ability anyways, or if they were, it was so negligible that it wasn't being used really for the city's purpose. So we put it back in, they've paid it. They've provided a list of all of the fertilizers and everything and done everything we've asked them to do. So, and they did it timely without us having to remind them or say anything. So I want to thank Robbie and his staff out there. They do a great job. They have an older facility, and if you go out there, they do a great job making it look really nice for a 50, 60-year-old golf course. It looks really nice.
Thank you. Thank you, Lori, for that. Were you going to update us on something else as well, or just the golf course this evening?
Just the golf course.
Okay. Joel, any other updates?
That's it, unless anyone has any other questions for me.
Any questions for Joel? Okay. We're going to move on to section 5, mayor and council reports. Let's see. I'll go first. We're deep in the thick of the legislative session. So I've been attending lots of legislative session meetings with various people. Also have been enjoying celebrating Student of the Month. I think that's the highlight of February. It's going to be the highlight of February for me, is our elementary and junior high school students of the month. Regarding legislative session, I just wanted to go over the bills that, are truly going to impact us as a city, and in, potentially in good ways or bad ways, but just to give, in case, you haven't heard where the bills are. The first is, of course, our ATV bill, SB 168. And where that bill is located is it's still at the Senate. So as we know, it goes to committee, and then through the Senate, and then House committee, and then the House. We continue to be very grateful to Senator Mike McKell for sponsoring this bill. And he did accept a substitute that would expand the hours to from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. So I think it's with great anticipation that we see if this bill passes with those expanded hours. It is circled in the Senate right now for third reading, which means he will at some point uncircle it, and then it will be heard, and we'll see the deliberation and whether or not it passes the Senate or not. That is where that bill is. We're also watching. There are two bills, interestingly enough, by the same senator, Senator Andrag, that one is a housing affordability bill and one is a short-term rental bill. So the short-term rental bill just popped up. Andrag has been working tirelessly for housing, a bill on housing affordability. So that bill is Senate Bill 164. And basically that bill has really good stuff for Moab and some really bad stuff for Moab. The good stuff is that, it outlines further what it provides a pre-development grant for rural communities. And that allocation is, they're looking at $500,000 for pre-development grant. So that's something that, developers in Moab would be eligible for. That'd be a very good thing for us. Something that I worked on. But then also in the same bill is language about eliminating a city's ability to do Oahu, like we've done. So it's a bill with a really good thing and a really bad thing. And so we're watching it, and the League of Cities and Towns opposes it. The other bill that Senator Andrade has proposed just in the last few days, is a short-term rental bill that basically says an owner of a housing unit, so you as the owner of a house, can essentially do a nightly rental out of your home, and a municipality can't tell you no. So we know in Moab how disastrous that bill would be, and I'm working very, very hard to advocate on our behalf and on behalf of all other communities that would really suffer. We would suffer from quality of life. We would suffer from the inability to regulate, and it's just a really, really, really awful bill, just a disastrous bill for us. It's not even gone to committee yet, so we will see how that action plays out. But they're all very clear and that Moab opposes, but so does the League of Cities and Towns and affordable housing advocates that are really speaking up about that. And then finally, one that we've been following too is the outdoor advertisements amendment. It's a Billboards Bill, Senate Bill 61. And that bill is essentially, it allows for the electrification of billboards. And as we know, because we're working on our dark skies and becoming, passing ordinances so that we can be a dark skies community, this would jeopardize that. It would take away our ability to regulate. So that'd be a bummer. And we've been really clear about that. There are other bills going on, but those are the super hot ones. So I thought I'd share those tonight. And that is it from me. Ronnie?
I don't have much. I had our little subcommittee, evaluation subcommittee for the EMS Special Service District met again. We're just continuing our work on this year's evaluation of our director. And other than that, just have been partaking in legislative informational calls and meetings. I did miss the LPC meeting yesterday because I was at my other job. It has been interesting because sometimes bills come up that you can hook up with other community organizations. There was one that has been a concern to crisis centers around the state. So we were able to connect Seahaven, its director, with the Utah League of Cities and Towns on that one to give their input. And the only other thing was through that work and being on the EMS board, I guess there's going to be a small grant committee that will work on giving away $6 million in one-time funds to rural EMS agencies. And so there's a grant review committee consisting of a member of the Utah Association of Counties, a member of the Utah League of Cities and Towns, 2 members of the Rural EMS Directors Association, and one of the senators that made this funding possible, Senator Owens, Representative Lund. So anyway, the Utah League of Cities and Towns was looking for someone elected from a rural area to serve on that. So I'll be serving on that along with one of our rural EMS directors, Andy Smith from Grand County, and then actually the Carbon County Rural EMS Association member, Don Morelli, will be part of that too. That was it for me.
Thanks, Ronnie. Mike?
Yeah, several things. First of all, there's a group of pickleball players. I played with them for a while. A guy named Jack Edwards, whom I know, has been writing a proposal, and I've been helping him with it. Basically, what they want is to, the Grand County School District has offered to donate land for perpetual lease to the city, I presume. And if the city and county would jointly build 4 to 6 pickleball courts, basically just beyond the outfield fences at one of the high school's fields, they would love that. So anyway, that much is in progress. We're talking about very preliminary cost estimates, somewhere north of $200,000, depending on how many courts they build and how fancy you make them, whether you build a pavilion and a bathroom and all that kind of good stuff out there. So expect to see that request to be eventually integrated into the city's rec program to come your way. I did, Lori knows, and I think Brett's gotten wind of this too. I'm already, as far as ATV noise is concerned, you guys, I think everybody knows that I'm proceeding along the lines of noise metering this time as a compromise for me, forgetting about pass-by checking for the moment, and instead doing what Brett would be happier and other people as well, just doing stationary muffler tests basically, as this was demonstrated to us a couple of weeks ago. So I've kind of did a very drafty ordinance and passed that on, and I sure hope that much becomes a part of our discussion soon. I just don't want people out there listening to think that even if the state legislature bill does or does not pass, that that's the end of it. That's not the case, certainly not. We're just getting started. I just want the public to know that. The rest of it is water stuff. I guess most importantly, I want to put an informal pitch out for a measly $2,000. It's nothing compared to what the city would have to chip in for the intersection that Chuck talked about. But anyway, there's a guy named John Files. He's the hydrologist who did the work for San Juan Special Service District when they put in their well down by Kim's Lake. He apparently owns a depth of water transducer. Next week, he and Mark Stilson and myself and a couple other people are going to go out, and there's an abandoned well. I'm not sure who the well belongs to, but apparently we can use it as if it was ours. And John has offered to install this puppy for us for free. It's a data logger. It'd be a great research instrument for us. And the only thing hassle is it belongs to John and somebody needs to buy it from him. So there's a variety of organizations that could do that. The city is one. So I know you guys can't make any promises right now, but if I had a memorandum of understanding, oh, sure, we can do this, that would be a great thing in the next week. If not, then I'll have to look somewhere else for money. For only $2,000, I'm tempted to buy the damn thing myself, frankly, but it'd be better if the Moab Area Watershed Partnership bought it or DWS. But anyway, I'm just throwing that money out there. You guys all know that in general, water is going to get more expensive with a lot of research on safe yield that is yet to come. And there's other water stuff, but we're running late, so I think I will stop right there.
Thanks, Mike. Tawny.
Okay, I'm just going to start here. I wasn't able to get away from work the other day to attend Hasu's meeting, so I just gleaned these figures from the director's report, and it ties a little bit back into our closed session discussion about how needed housing is in our area. Our MAPS project is entirely full. There are 34 people on the waiting list for 1-bedroom apartments and 12 on the waiting list for 2-bedroom apartments. Cinema Court is full. There are 51 families on the waiting list for 1-bedroom, 55 for 2 bedrooms, and 31 for 3 bedrooms. The Virginian is also full, and they have 21 on the waiting list for 1 bedrooms and 9 for 2 bedrooms. So without breaking that confidence of our closed session, those numbers show me that housing is desperately needed. Where all those people are living right now, we don't know. So I am happy to make sure that Walnut Lane progresses as fast as it can, and that we can support Hasu or Community Rebuilds or whoever is doing what is considered affordable housing for our community. There were some weather-related delays at Wingate Village. They weren't able to install landscaping and some concrete work, but I think probably March, 1st of March to mid-March, that will go ahead. And in phase 2 at Wingate Village, the framing was completed. It said last week, and so I'm thinking that was 2 weeks ago, and roofing should be delivered out there, and that should begin next week. And let's see. And HASU is committed to building 8 homes at Arroyo Crossing. They've qualified 4 families for those, and they are looking forward to getting started. And I think the other 5 should be qualified by the end of February. And I attended Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District. We need a new acronym. They still have not had a positive case in residents at the care center, which is just an amazing feat. They've had about a 3% positivity rate in some of the employees, but they catch them quick and they send them home. And just as a side note, I was told by one of our ER nurses that through the entire pandemic, not one ER nurse has contracted COVID, and they have treated people almost every day of the pandemic. So our little hospital is doing something right. They can't do everything, but they're doing a lot right. The Special Service District, there was a lot of discussion about admin issues and finances and just some new regulations that are coming into play. Our state auditor has enacted a new rule that nursing homes and care centers, long-term care facilities of all kinds, need to have an internal audit by a certified CPA. And so the care center they put a request for a proposal out to a couple of local firms to see if they could do that audit for them. And evidently the pathway that goes from Park Drive through the path connects onto 500 West, the road doesn't. But people were trying to get through there through kind of a rickety gate and in vehicles. And so in cooperation with the city, and I'm assuming it was with Joel and Public Works, they have agreed to install some of our free boulders that we have stockpiled to make that part of that path impassable with a vehicle, but but bicycles and foot traffic can still get through. So I thought that was kind of a good partnership that we created. And I attended the Moab Museum meeting, and the board approved their mission, values, vision, and purpose statements. It's taken quite a little bit of time to get those ironed out and adopted. The museum does need to grow their trustees and their membership. If anybody is interested in being on the board, you can contact the Moab Museum and talk with the staff, and they can give you an idea of what it takes to be a trustee and some of the new things that they are doing at the museum. And I do have to give a shout out to the small staff at the museum and the interim director. They have done an incredible job through the pandemic of creating a new and more modern museum, a better curated museum. And they have listened to the community that have been able to be in there. And they've done a very good job. I don't know if you have been in there since it's been renovated. It's much, much different. And the museum would like to have more of a partnership with the city. I had a little discussion with Barb Webb, who is the president of the board, and we kind of just talked over some things that might work. And I had a conversation with Joel about the things that we might do. We had some ideas about maybe having the museum donate a piece or a display to be displayed in City Hall. Someday it will be open again and people will get to see it. And they also questioned me about, does our city staff have much of a connection to the museum? And my thoughts were that some of our staff is so new, the museum has been closed the entire time that they've been on staff. And so Mary and Tara would be happy to organize tours with staff or council or whoever wants to go in small groups. And I think Mary will be reaching out to get some of those things scheduled. And right now they have the elementary school kids artwork on display, and the kindergarten kids have made a giant mobile that hangs in the middle of the museum. It's really, really touching to see what our elementary kids think of where they live. And let's see. And I wanted to mention in last week's TI, there was an article that Tara Barish, who is the curatorial and collections manager, wrote about the urbanic map, which the museum has had restored, and just how intricate and how that entire map came into play. And it has not been decided yet. That map will not go away. It's coming back to our community. We just have not decided where it will be displayed. It probably won't be in the museum again, but we've had a few different ideas. So I think that's about all that I have.
Okay, thank you so much, Tawny. And Karen.
So I attended the Utah 100 communities, and just a little background because I was unfamiliar with it. The Community Renewable Energy Program is for communities who are committed to achieve net 100% renewable energy by 2030. Moab signed on along with 22 other Utah communities, and they passed a resolution. This participation was allowable because of Representative Handy's House Bill 411, which was drafted together with Rocky Mountain Power. So basically, we as a community have decided to opt in to meeting our electricity needs with a comparable amount of renewable energy construction projects. It's fundamentally allowing us as a municipality to work with Rocky Mountain Power to offer a choice of what kind of energy a subscriber can participate in. So that was cool. I mean, Carly probably has way more information. I know she does than I do, but that was one of my meetings. And then I asked for a meeting with Joel and the mayor and our communications director to discuss a different approach to reaching our community about when it comes to legislative actions that we as a council might be enacting that would directly impact certain bodies, certain businesses, potential neighborhoods. This council has made clear that communication is essential to try and to engage and educate the community. And staff has been very compliant in doing what is required by state regulations with noticing and getting information out on through Facebook and our websites. And so, but oftentimes we're confronted by constituents who perhaps feel blindsided by actions that we take, and they might not find out about issues until actually we've voted on them after the fact. So in an effort to try and give advance notification to potential affected parties, the group today came up with potentially, like if we see as a council something on the agenda that could potentially warrant, for us to take pause and think that, like last week or 2 weeks ago, with the UTV businesses, that they could get a heads up that Lisa has agreed to work directly with us, and she will send out a courtesy email to affected parties, and we'll be able to disseminate information for us. So, I mean, that was just a discussion of trying to make sure that people are engaged, because even though we're head deep in all the issues that we're dealing with, oftentimes people are not paying attention. And so, we have the ability with our Treasury Department now to sort of, collate groups and to get information out. So I just thought that would be something worth talking about. And then I received information today that SkyWest has confirmed that they will be offering flights to Salt Lake City starting on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, pending DOT approval, which is expected to be granted. This is in addition to the flight to Denver, and the schedule will be released this weekend. So that's super exciting. So we're going to have flights to Salt Lake and to Denver. And also Andy, our airport director, Andy Solzvig, has asked if there's any actors or airplane aficionados out there who might be interested in participating in a live airport emergency exercise on Thursday, April 22nd. He would love to have participation from 8 to 11:30 a.m. To reenact for first responder groups to simulate injured passengers. So every 3 years, commercial airports are required to host a live scenario-based incident in which first responders have to react. So if anyone is interested, it's going to be super exciting. You can contact Andy Solzvig through the Grand County website. He needs 20 volunteers. So if anyone's interested.
That would have been my jam like 20 years ago.
We'll get people who are interested in doing that. So, but that's all. That's it for me.
Thank you, Karen. Gosh, I'm so tempted to sign up because they're so much fun, but who has the time or the patience for that? Gosh, I'll spread the word though. I know some younger actors and actresses that might be interested. Thanks for that update. And Kaylin, you're up.
I attended a Moab Dark Skies meeting, and in addition to the usual topics, much of our time was spent discussing the Billboard bills. And we've also spent time talking about those at the city legislative group. I had a solid waste special service district.
Oh, hold
meeting.
on. I actually, if you want to expand on that, I mean, I think it would be helpful if you'd like to. I mean,
on the Billboard bills in general, like what their status is.
Well, yeah, maybe, or just how that they would negatively impact Moab. I mean, I said they would, but I didn't really specify.
Okay, so for those that aren't familiar with them, they would, it's another case of preemption. They would preclude a city from disallowing existing billboards to convert to electronic billboards. And those, while they can potentially be like dimmed significantly at night, we'd probably be, it appears that we would be precluded from mandating that they be dimmed significantly. They also, I think it's the second substitution, would allow cities that had an ordinance or local governments that had an ordinance as of the beginning of the year that disallow all electronic billboards on site as well as off site to continue to disallow them. And so Moab, fortunately, we are in that position, but we're a very small city, and Grand County doesn't have that, and there are a number of billboards right outside city limits. So, and light glow and light pollution doesn't respect governmental boundaries. So even, and most cities are not in this position. So even though it has been amended in a way that would benefit Moab potentially, it's still kind of a bad deal for most of the state. So it seems like ULCT is still in opposition. Negotiations are ongoing. Does that answer your questions, Mayor? Or did that?
Yeah, I think so. It's just, it would just be such a bummer with all of our efforts for Night Sky. And yeah, so.
I attended a solid waste special service district meeting, and it's a relatively quiet agenda. The sponsorship program is up and running. $1,900 have been collected so far to support the Canyonlands Community Recycling Center. We received a report recently from Monument Waste and from city staff. And Mike had a question about trends as far as recycling participation, and my computer ate some of my files recently in a very mysterious way, so I don't have trends, but I did dig into the district and Monument Waste data a little bit. And so as a preliminary report, just looking at what gets recycled collectively between the recycling center and Monument, relative to the municipal solid waste, we have a diversion rate of 9%. If you factor in all the green waste that we're now chipping to use as mulch and possibly composting in the future, without getting into all the other waste streams. So it's sort of an optimistic viewpoint. It's an 18% diversion rate. The national average for cities is 35%. So what that illustrates to me is that regardless of trends, if we want to advance in terms of our sustainable waste management, we'll have to look at like how to do better. To continue on what Karen was reporting on the Utah 100 communities. So the meeting that we were at was largely about the governance structure. Basically, we would be a member along with over 20 communities that are collectively negotiating with Rocky Mountain Power and the state about the terms of this, what would be a massive new renewable energy program that our city customers would be able to participate in. And there are some upfront costs in getting that going. And so this governance agreement basically would allocate those costs relative to the number of ratepayers in a community. And so what that means for Moab is that we wouldn't be on the hook for very much at all. $7,000 is the estimate, just because like Salt Lake City and other large Utah cities are participating. And then that is also reflected in the governance for most decisions. Our vote is weighted relative to our ratepayers, with the exception of a few big decisions when just an absolute number of participating communities is required to really big decisions. So the highlight for me, if you will, is that there are going to be a subset of communities that are called anchor communities, which agree to this is a multi-step process with multiple opportunities for communities to exit if they decide that it's not for them. And so there's some uncertainty in terms of how the final costs will be distributed. Anchor communities agree to fill in the gaps to make sure that the process gets across the finish line, even as communities, if they drop out. The costs for the anchor communities will, even though they'll be higher because they'll fill in the gap, they are shared proportionately to their number of ratepayers. So again, Moab, if it became an anchor community, the additional costs would potentially be a maximum of 4,000 more. In one of the breakout conversations, one of the Salt Lake community members, Mill Creek, who was instrumental in drafting the governance documents, did say it would be nice to have geographic diversity in the anchor communities, just to show that it's not a Wasatch Front only thing, that it is really a statewide effort. So I'm interested in us looking at being an anchor community. We were one of the first communities in Utah to adopt a 100% renewable goal before this was even a gleam in some state legislators' eyes. And And so I'd like to see Moab continue its leadership in this area. That's
So
what I've got.
Well, so I've had that conversation with other potential anchor communities. And so how do we put that on our agenda and make that happen? I think it's a question for Carly.
So I think the way we would finalize it is by signing the ILA as an anchor community. And even before that, they're looking for some sort of commitment, like at least a soft commitment, so they can start understanding how much everyone would owe under that anchor community rubric. So we can bring it to you next meeting and have you sort of give a straw poll of, yes, we want to do it, and give direction for us to sign the ILA in that way, which would be in a few weeks. It's still being finalized.
Yes, please. Let's do that. Let's be sure. Summer, if you want to go ahead and put that on the agenda, that'd be amazing.
And I would just like to, oh, sorry, Summer. But I was just going to mention that, you know, since it's based upon population, it really was very minimal for the community of Moab to, like, I mean, even if we were to be an anchor, I mean, you know, it was, you know, Salt Lake is basically taking the brunt of, you know, the money that it would cost to participate up front. And I mean, I think it's absolutely worth it.
Do we even need a straw poll based on just the shared excitement for this, Carly? Or can we just move forward and you bring it on down?
I can just bring it on down, and that's how the ILA will be presented to you. We've even budgeted money already for this project, like this year. So, and it's just, I think around like $5,500 a year, and we have ample money for it. So you have been supportive of this in the past, and this would be, you know, we've prepped for it. So.
And I'm really grateful that both staff and some council members attended that meeting and are informed and are advocating for us to do this. So I think we move forward. I mean, really, like, if you want to do a report on it at next council meeting, because the ILA is not yet like in a position to be signed, that would be fine. But I think we're feeling pretty safe to move forward with it. Thank you, Kaylin, for reporting on that. And thank you, Karen, for reporting on that as well, and for attending that meeting. I know that was a big time commitment, so I'm grateful. And thanks, Carly. Okay, that is it for Mayor and Council reports. And we are at 8:15, not too shabby. Section 6, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion? I better go through my view here. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes of February 9th.
Thank you. Ronnie, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kaylin. Discussion?
I don't know if anyone else had anything. I sent 2 things to Summer, and I know she already dealt with them. Thank you, Summer.
Thank you, Ronnie. I will call for the vote. Kaylin?
Aye.
Tawny?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. New business 7-1, confirmation of mayoral appointment of Steve Getz to the Water Conservation and Drought Management Advisory Board term commencing immediately and expiring on December 31st, 2023. Briefing and possible action, and I'm going to go ahead and read the confirmation of mayoral appointment to 7-2 of Eve Tallman to the Water Conservation and Drought Management Advisory Board term commencing immediately and expiring on December 31st, 2023. Carly, I had asked Carly to just say, give a brief blurb about what these confirmation appointments, the confirmation of these appointments are, and why I'm appointing these two. Carly?
Thank you, Mayor. So per Moab City Code, the city's Water Conservation and Drought Management Board, they recommend new board members to the mayor, who then can choose to nominate them to you for confirmation. So we have had 2 vacancies. We advertise these vacancies for over a month on social media and in the paper, and we received 3 applicants. The Water Conservation Board interviewed 2 applicants, and these are the 2 that they have recommended. These applicants were recommended unanimously, and they're before you for confirmation tonight.
Thank you, Carly. Council, do you have any questions on the process? Okay, Mike, I saw your hand. Do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I just want to say I did interview them both along with the rest of the water board. They're both great. Steve Getz, whom I did not know before the thing, I'm not sure if he's retired or not. He's an environmental chemist. He grew up in the San Luis Valley in southern Colorado. I used to climb a lot down there in mountains in another life. And that area is noted for its really high water table. And yet he and his family found that it's not inexhaustible water, and that's what spurred his interest in water. So he's going to be great both from a water quality point of view and a water source quantity point of view. So I'm really pleased to have him. Eve Talman is the other one. Everybody knows Eve. Of course, she was one of the founders of the water board in the first place. And there's nothing I can add about Eve. I'm just delighted to have her.
Well, I am delighted to accept a motion to approve the confirmation of both. Karen? Oh, you're muted.
I move to confirm the appointment of Steve Getz and Eve Tolman as a member of the Water Conservation and Drought Management Advisory Board for a renewable term commencing immediately and expiring December 31st, 2023, in accordance with the bylaws of the Water Conservation Board.
Thank you, Karen. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Mike. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Ronnie?
Aye.
Tawny?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. 7-3, City of Moab Grant Program 2021, briefing and possible action. We've got Lisa and Kelly is sideways. Welcome both of you. I'll just open it to you to provide any introduction that you'd like for this agenda item.
Thank you, Mayor. As you may recall, on December 18th, the Moab City Council voted to allocate $100,000 in funding for a one-time Moab City grant program. And it was open to both eligible nonprofit organizations and governmental organizations that could show they had a clear impact from the COVID-19 pandemic. So we received 30 applications for this grant, and there was a total request of $246,621.56 for the $100,000 that we had available. 86,900 of that was from government entities, and $159,722 was from nonprofit groups in our community. So the committee, which was made up of myself and Danny Guerrero and Kelly McInerney, who's here presenting tonight with me, Mark Jellisant from the engineering department, and Liz Holland from the Moab Arts and Recreation Center, met on February 11th to review all these applications and consider the needs and services provided by the community and whether the grant fund was the appropriate forum for the submitted requests. The council has received a detailed sort of description of what the committee recommended, and that totals $100,000 exactly. Ultimately, I would say, this is all up to the city council in terms of what you actually want to do, but these are the recommended allocations from the committee, and we are happy to make any changes you'd like. So if you have any questions, we're here to answer, and otherwise, please just let us know what you prefer.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I guess now I'll just look to council for conversation around this, the results of this rubric and thoughts.
One question. In the past, the council has been provided with a folder with the actual applications, so that if we had questions, we could review those. And it seems like I appreciate that the summary is very easy to assimilate, but some of the descriptions of what the money's being applied for are limited, and so let's see. I'm wondering, it seems like in some cases, multiple programs were effectively applied for by a single organization. And it seems like the committee made judgments about, well, this is fundable or this isn't. I'm sorry, this isn't a very coherent question.
Dylan, if what you're asking is, could you have access to the actual applications? There was, the spreadsheet was provided to you in the council folder, and you could click on all of those and get the complete requests that were made by each organization. And again, these are only recommendations from the committee. I mean, whatever you guys want to do is completely fine, I think, with everybody on the committee. But that was included in the city council folder on.
Yeah,
Thursday.
Lisa,
Yes, sir.
may I suggest, I thought you guys provided a very nice summary of your rationale of how you ranked them. What took priority. You might let the public know what that was while
Okay.
Kalen's doing his thing.
Would you like me to go through each one?
No, just very top of the document. I think you had a few sentences that described to whom you tended to give priority to.
Yes, and so basically, one of the things the committee looked at is the short test, which you guys are all familiar with. And the short test involved a lawsuit in Salt Lake City, which had to do with, what the appropriateness of certain government contributions to private enterprises, including nonprofits, and in this case, governmental entities would be. And there are some specific things that are in that court case were sort of determined to be not exactly, appropriate for government entities. And one of those is that general operating costs and maintenance are not really fundable by the city. And that is one of the things we looked at. The ones that were recommended to receive the highest funding by the committee here primarily involved health and safety. And there were also programs that were serving at-risk youth and animals and other community-wide opportunities that the committee determined were, higher ranked than others. Programs provided by entities that have proven themselves dependable, innovative, and which the committee members trust would meet a proven need were also looked at. Because a lot of these organizations, have been in our community for many, many years, and some of them are fairly new, and we did consider those as well. And some of them, are getting some funding, or recommended for some funding, I should say. The committee found that for a variety of reasons, there were two requesting projects that the committee didn't feel met the City of Moab grant project budget and requirements, I should say. And so in the process of reviewing those, and there are explanations about why that might be in this document, which is also part of the agenda. So, the public is certainly welcome to look it up, or I can bring it up on the screen if you'd like, but we thought it might be a little clunky for the purposes of your all's conversation. We reviewed them all and considered the amount being requested and looked at the percentage of the operating budget of that nonprofits based on the amount being requested. And these were the ultimate decisions that the committee made. So, and again, they're only recommendations, it truly is a council program, and you are all certainly most welcome to make any changes you would like, and we will happily take care of that for you.
Real quick regarding the short, I know that was a requirement for the, as we were talking about community contributions. That's not this grant. This grant is actually tied to COVID, I thought.
Well, this grant does not come from COVID funding. It actually comes
Yeah.
from our general fund, but it was money that became available because of the COVID funding. So we
Right.
did ask
So it's
that.
not, but just to be super clear, this is not the community contributions grant. This
It
is
is not. It's completely separate, and that's why it's opened up to governmental entities who saw a significant impact due to COVID-19.
yeah. And
The
so
nonprofits weren't required.
impact. So it was kind of set up to be like impacted by COVID-19. And
Well,
so I
for
wasn't
the
sure that
government
we would,
entities,
oh,
but
I'm
not-
sorry.
I'm sorry, for the government entities, but not for the nonprofits. That's not how, for the nonprofits, we didn't require them to demonstrate a COVID impact.
Mhm. So I'm surprised to hear that we were, applying the short because of that. And I did think that it was more COVID related than what appears to be in terms of distribution. Ronnie, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to ask Lisa, I know, reading guidelines, sometimes simple and sometimes complicated, and things like the short case can be simple or complicated to understand. Do you have any recommendations after seeing the two folks who did apply that maybe didn't fit in as well, that maybe next time we do guidelines, we just add some language that might have been helpful? I mean, thanks for your explanations. I understand why you guys thought they didn't fit.
I don't really know an answer to that. It's something that the committee could definitely review in the future, whoever those committee members are. And, really the two organizations we didn't recommend for a variety of reasons. One of them, it just didn't seem to fit with, a program that the city would naturally fund. And the other seemed like it would be more appropriate for, broader entities like the BLM and the Grand County and the SITLA to fund, because it happened all in the backcountry and didn't really provide much of a direct benefit to our residents. And so those were the things we discussed with that. If the council would like to see some changes in those guidelines, we would be more than happy to.
I mean, I figured there's always a percentage that you get that don't match the guidelines, but yeah, I mean, happy to take any recommendations or edits you recommend next time if you think it helps. But I'm happy to make a motion, but I don't know.
I wanted to share something else before we get into motion, and let's just give every council member an opportunity to speak to this that wants to. Can I just share something? So I was quite shocked that for some of the requests to receive such low funding. And I mean, it's probably not a surprise that I would share that in looking at the community rebuilds of requesting the 8,950 only being awarded the 1,025. I was actually shocked by that, in that they are a provider of affordable housing. I think it's clear that what they're asking for is, the way in which they compensate the volunteers that do the construction. So it's a trade program, building tradesmen, and also providing affordable housing in our community. So I was just very surprised at how low that was funded, quite honestly. So I'd have to just say that I would advocate for a reconsideration of that allotment. And for what it's worth, total no conflict of interest. I'm no longer associated with community rebuilds, other than by, I don't know, the fame of it all. But I didn't know if other council members felt that way. I know they were hugely affected by the pandemic, in the way that they, build homes. So I just wanted to give a plug for them. And it also felt like education organizations were not funded at the level that was requested. And I guess, the schools, I guess I would have hoped also that the schools had been funded at a higher rate as well. Both Grand County and the charter school. that's all that really, those are the two that gave me, or the three that gave me pause. And I just wanted to share that. Whether or not that'll change for this grant or not, if council members agree or disagree, or that as we're creating this rubric, as Tani mentioned earlier, whatever we can do to support, whether it's Community Rebuilds or HASU or any other organization that's building housing, that's a priority. That's a big priority in our community. So to give them support where we can, I think is really important. Other council members? Karen?
I would just say the ride with respect. I mean, I know it's, you know, on our public lands, but looking, you know, working on the Mill Creek development of, you know, trying to figure out what we would do with Powerhouse and the most effective ways that we historically have seen, like with Sand Flats, is having volunteers out there, you know, in a friendly way, educating our visitors. And even though it's on public lands, you know, the OHV issue hits our residents more than anything that we've heard so far this year. And, you know, being able to, you know, educate visitors and, you know, riding with respect and, you know, riding quietly when you go into town, because all those discussions get to happen when you have volunteers out there. So I was, you know, I mean, for me, I was a little disappointed there wasn't any money that actually went towards that. Even though
I agree with Karen. Yeah, I agree with Karen on that one as well. Again, an education piece.
Yeah, and then the rim to rim restoration. I mean, I thought that was, I know all the great work that happens with that, but that seemed like a lot of money to go towards that compared to where other monies could go to. You know, families were affected more than anything during COVID, and I too thought this was more COVID related issues than restoration projects, but that's just me.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Mayor, if I may.
Oh, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Oh, but
go ahead, Kevin.
Kevin already spoke.
Kevin, you had a chance to talk.
And then Mike.
Oh, I was just going to say that I'm not surprised that the short test is applicable here because we're giving away money. And so I think we should receive fair value. And I think in general, I support the allocations that the committee chose. It looks like a challenging job to figure out. So thank you for your work on that. That was a lot of organizations and a lot of requests to weed through. But it does seem like, and with some of these, I have a hard time like fully grasping how it's not just operating costs and exactly what how to quantify the benefits. And so in some ways, specific projects like restoration are easier to understand, even though I understand wanting to value education and supporting affordable housing, even if the way we're supporting affordable housing, the deliverable to the city is a little bit intangible. So that's all, no specific request for changes. I feel like last year I waded into advocating for some, and it's so complicated, it feels really messy to do on the fly. That's all.
Mike, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I guess so. Well, folks, it seemed like we went through this same kind of process a year ago, whenever the last time we did community contributions was. And as I recall, it got all snagged because it's easy to say, well, I think my favorite pet organization deserves more money, and there's something to be said for that. But the problem then comes is then somebody else is going to end up getting less money than they had been expecting at the time the committee did their work. And we argued at some length over who that should be, because, so I'm not sure you guys have addressed that. With so many people kind of have the same maybe I suppose it's because I don't have any particular association with, well, I do actually, I'm a musician, blah, 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 but I would feel uncomfortable advocating, say, the Moab Music Festival or the Moab Folk Festival, just because I happen to be a musician. I'm really kind of happy. And let's put it this way, I'm going to be uncomfortable altering the committee's recommendations without a really serious objection to what they did, which I don't see yet. So unless you guys who've suggested changes can quickly come up with a way to suggest who's not going to get their contribution, I would be happy to move to accept the committee's work as it stands.
Tani, comment from you?
I agree with Mike and Kaylin. Overall, I think that they did a really good job weighing all the factors in and trying to come up with something that's fair. When you do things like this, somebody is always going to say, well, this group should have gotten more, because I wish we could have just given them all what they asked for. That would have been the easiest thing, but that wasn't what the committee had to do. And why have a committee if we've got to renegotiate their recommendation? I think they did a good job, and I am completely comfortable accepting the work that they did and moving this one on and getting these groups their money.
Okay, Karen? You are again muted for, I think, the 4th time with me.
Can we make a drinking game out of this? You're muted. All right. So anyway, I was going to see if, I don't know if it's possible to get a temperature from the council to see if anybody else thought Ride with Respect is worthy of getting any funds, because I would propose taking $100 from all of the said groups and put $100 in the kitty for Ride with Respect. But oh, no feeling.
I think that would either be a motion that you could make and then it could die, or if you could, council, does anyone feel like that's, I think we've got a majority that's already said.
I think their reasoning was sound about where the events will take place. That doesn't mean that particular group isn't worthy of our support or in some other way. I think just the criteria that for this particular grant, the value to the city is pretty negligible. So I think their reasoning was solid.
And I guess I should just respond to Mike's comment about pet projects. I don't know if you're insinuating community rebuild is a pet project of mine. Definitely could qualify as pet project for sure. But every one of us ran on the platform of affordable housing. And this is a really easy way to say you support affordable housing by, increasing the funding for community rebuilds. But I understand too that it is messy to deviate from staff recommendations. So I just did feel like I needed to respond to the pet project comment that you made, Mike. I think there's no question that I care deeply about that organization, but I care deeply about it because I care very, very deeply about the creation of affordable housing in Moab, for what that's worth.
Mayor, can I say one thing?
Well, I'll accept that, Emily. I'll accept that, and I don't mean to offend you, Emily. You know that it's a great thing. And
I think we need to put our money where our mouth is in terms of how affordable housing. That's
yeah.
all.
Well,
we're going to do that later on the agenda.
Yeah. Huh? What was that, Kaylee?
Do that later in the agenda in a big way.
Come on.
True. Rental. True. Lisa, did you want to say something in defense of it?
I only wanted to say that the 5 members of the committee, fully respect every single organization that applied, and there's nothing, intended as a negative towards any of those organizations with the recommendations that were made. I mean, this was an hours and hours long process, and we are happy to do whatever the council would prefer that we do in the end. You know, this was just the best that these 5 members of our staff came up with to present to you.
I'm sorry, did it feel like I was saying something?
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. I just wanted everyone to understand that we really do respect and appreciate all of these organizations. And, you know, it's a hard decision when we try to come up with a recommendation. And we understand from the council's point of view that it's a really hard decision for you too, to look at this and maybe, you know, want to make alterations. And it's perfectly fine if you do. And it really is your decision in the end. So.
I move to approve the City of Moab Grant Program 2021 Ad Hoc Committee's recommendation for this one-time grant program in the amount of $100,000.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Tawny. Any further discussion on this agenda item?
I just like to say that even though there's hard things about it, that I'm really grateful to the work that staff and you, Mayor, did in getting more of the federal and state money this past fall, which is basically what allows this to happen and allows this generosity to flow out through the community along with the Moab Bucks program. And I just think it's a really nice thing that we're able to support all the many, or not all of them, but many of our local organizations that do so much that the city can't do by itself, even in this dark winter. Thank you all.
The dark pandemic winter. Any other discussion?
Thank you, committee. And really, thank you.
Likewise for me. Thank you, guys.
I will call for the vote. Kaylin?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Tawny?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. 7-4, proposed resolution 3/2021, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Moab, Utah, authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than $7 million aggregate principal amount of wastewater and water revenue bonds series 2021. So I believe we have Chuck and Alex and together to present on this, but I did, Council, I did want to, for both 7-4 and 7-5, since we're talking bonding, I did ask Joel to communicate with Alex to give us an overview of where we are in terms of bonding, what's been bonded, what we're bonding against, and where we'll bond moving forward in the future. There you are, Alex. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good to be with you. I was listening in on YouTube, so I was just hearing the mayor say 2 different things at the same time. So I've canceled out my YouTube, so now I think I'm with you here.
Well, welcome to us. Welcome to our meeting in real time.
Yes.
We understand why people watch, follow along with YouTube. It's helpful. So I was just saying, though, that we were hopeful that before we get into the details of 7-4 and 7-5, that you might give an overview of information for this council of where we've bonded, how we've bonded, or what we've bonded against, and then moving forward, what our options are and why we're looking at bonding for these 2 particular things. So thank you, Alex, for joining us and providing us with information tonight.
Sure. Happy to be here. And I guess, do we want to talk about the water bond first or the sales tax bond first? Which is first on the agenda?
Definitely
Alex,
water is first on the agenda. And so, but at the same time, what would be helpful is an overview of our, all things bonds.
Of both. Okay.
Yes.
Joe, were you going to say something, or did you want me to just talk through the water bonds first.
The mayor chimed in, and I think what she's looking for is you just give an overview of where we're at with our current bond situation, and then kind of address both of them at the same time, so we can have an overall general discussion.
Sure. Okay. No, that sounds great. So, as many of you might recall, back in 2018, why don't I just start there with the water and sewer revenue bonds that were issued. One was through the Water Quality Board of the state of Utah, and that was a $4.2 million issue for the wastewater facility. There was also a concurrent Series A bond that was issued in combination with that, that was purchased by Zions Bank in the amount of $2.478 million. And so those are the only two water and sewer revenue bonds that the city currently has on their books. Those bonds have been paid over the last couple of years. The Series 2018 A bond that Zions Bank owns will be paid off in 2034. There's about a $210,000 annual payment associated with that. The Series B bond that is owned by the Water Quality Board, that goes up until 2038. And the annual payments on that from now until 2008 fluctuate between $650,000 and $790,000. So those are the two water and sewer bonds to be aware of that would tie into this proposed 2021 water project. The sales tax bonds that are currently outstanding is a 2003 bond that the city issued through the Community Impact Board through the state of Utah as well. That was a bond issued for the improvements made to City Hall. And that bond goes out until 2029 with annual payments between $89,000 and $108,000 from now till then. The original issue on that bond was a little over $2 million. It was $2,050,000. The second sales tax revenue bond was issued in 2009, and that was for the swimming pool project, also issued through the Community Impact Board as well. That original bond amount was approximately $4.7 million. And of course, the city's been paying that down over the last 11 or 12 years. It goes out until 2035. So there's still 14 years left on that bond with annual payments of around $191,000. Joel may want to speak to the fact that even though that's a sales tax revenue bond, there's another form of revenue that is being used.
That bond we don't actually pay. That's paid by the Special Service District Recreation Board here in the county. So that it's technically under our name and it's held against our sales tax revenue, but we do not make that payment. If for some reason that district failed to make the payment, we would be legally obligated and on the hook for it, but we don't make the payment currently.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that, Joel. The other debt that the council should be aware of and might recall a couple of years ago in 2019, it's not technically considered a bond, but it's called a real property lease, but it's similar to a bond in that you make semi-annual payments on it. That was a $1.8 million loan through Zions Bank, and that was to purchase the Walnut Lane property. And so it's important to note that this new sales tax bond that's on the agenda tonight is just as a continuation of that project to start to build the units, the housing units associated with that original purchase. So we knew this was coming down the pike, 2 years ago when we started that first phase. And now we're here today getting ready to begin that second phase of that project. So those are that's a pretty good overview, I think, Mayor.
Yeah, so in like just adult language, that like for those of us that have like bought a home and borrowed money for a home and then borrowed money for like a car or things like that, are are we looking at this is like a refinance where what we owe is going to be put into this new, so what we used for the purchase of the property, it'll be rolled into like a refinance would into the new?
I appreciate you bringing that up because that's a good segue into a topic that we wanted to discuss. The current parameter on this bond that we'll be looking at here shortly is 6.5 million. In working with Caitlin and others there at the city, the thought is the new money portion needed right now is 6.4 million. We added a little bit of flexibility there with the 6.5. However, getting to the mayor's question, the loan that is currently existing with Zions, that $1.8 million loan, possibly could get rolled into this new sales tax bond and essentially get, like you mentioned, refinanced. It hasn't been approved that way yet. Based on current interest rate figures that we're looking at, I believe that the new loan or the new bond would have a lower interest rate than what the existing loan has from 2019. So if it's possible and if the bank is willing to roll that in, and again, the only reason to do that would be to save Moab City money, interest savings, then what I would propose, or at least let you and the council discuss, is whether you'd like to increase the maximum par amount of the sales tax bond from 6.5 to, let's say, 8.5, only for the purpose to have that flexibility to tie both of the loans into one, if that's what we deem appropriate as we continue to move forward with this new bond. Otherwise, we can adopt it as is.
We'll get to that when we get to that agenda item. So we'll get to that. So I actually appreciate that that tee up there for us. So back to adult language, to help us all wrap our heads around what we're agreeing to tonight as well. In the event that our debt to income ratio was too high, meaning we just didn't have the income to support the amount that we're borrowing, or like even our equity or our collateral, like what Zions Bank would be holding as collateral wouldn't be sufficient, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? Like you're sitting here with us saying, Moab City, you're in a good place, collateral's there, debt to ratio income is there. And so what you're providing to us is sort of like what a loan officer would provide to a homeowner shopping for a loan for their home. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I feel like that's helpful for us to put that in those terms, because millions of dollars feels like a lot of money, and it's hard to, approve it without knowing where we are financially. And so that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
A question for you, Alex. You're the banker, not me, but I have been reading the interest rates are going up, not down. So if we refinance at a higher rate, wouldn't that hurt us in the pocketbook?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it would hurt you. So my thought would be, unless you're able to refinance at a lower rate and get interest savings by locking in something lower than you're currently paying, we absolutely would not want to do that. I will tell you that although we haven't been able to lock anything in yet, since we're just now moving forward with these projects, we have estimated on the new projects, an interest rate in the 1.5% to 2% range. The loan, for example, that you have currently with Zions for the purchase of the property is a little bit over 3%. So rates would certainly have to increase dramatically between now and, let's say, a month from now or 6 weeks from now, when we might be able to close on the loan, for it not to make sense to do something like that. And just adding to your question, Mike, about interest rates, we have seen an interest rate movement upwards over the last few weeks, somewhere around 20-25 basis points from where rates were. However, even with the increase in interest rates overall, we're at almost historic lows over the last 30 years. Up until a couple of weeks ago, we were at rates were only lower, and I'm talking from a municipal rates, right? Municipal lending rates were only lower over the last 30 years. In August of 2020, we hit the all-time low. And so I had a sheet that I have been using over the last several months showing that interest rates have been higher, like 99.7% of the time, than where we are at. Again, because we've seen an increase right now in the last couple of weeks, we're probably more in the 97% arena, but overall rates are still at almost all-time lows. So people that are able to, if they have the need and there's good project, this certainly would be a good time to move ahead on borrowing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. So Joel, did you want to share anything before we move into 7.4 on our agenda?
Yeah, or 7. No, I want to share on 7.5. I want to speak exactly what Alex is speaking to. The reason this was presented to you as 6.5 million in your packet is because that's how much more we need in order to finish the project. If a motion was made to increase it to 8.5 to roll in to refinance, we didn't want that to create confusion. We were asking for 8.5 million and we were going 8.5 million into debt. We're still only going 6.5 million into debt. The other 2 is already there. So the 6.5 was what the request is. If you approved it to 8.5, you're just rolling in the 2 that's already sitting there. So we didn't want to cause confusion. We were adding 8.5 to the 2 that was already out. So it was 10.5. So 6.5 is what's needed. If in the motion it's approved to go to 8.5 to roll in for a refinance, if so, the interest rates allow for that, then we wanted to be clear, 6.5 is what we need. Okay.
Well, I think that's really helpful to understand where we were coming from with the 6.5. I guess we'll get to that agenda item. I definitely encourage us to consider a big roll in. But anyway, and I think that was kind of clear when we met the last time to talk about this too. So thank you for that, Joel. That's helpful. All right, so let's just pick them off one at a time. So let's start with 7.4. And thank you, Alex, for that description too. I think that really helps us as we're moving into these items. So 7.4, proposed resolution 3/2021 is for the wastewater and water revenue bonds, as I outlined earlier. So Chuck, did you want to speak to this item just very briefly of what we're going to fix with all this money?
Yes, I would like to. And I have just a couple of quick slides, but I think it would be valuable to look at them. Can you see my PowerPoint there?
Not yet, but remember, you kind of broke up before, so I'll let you know if you start breaking up, okay?
Yeah, that's right. Then I'll just read it from my end if I have to.
Okay.
Not working now? Let me just...
it worked and then it disappeared. It was up and it was down. So I think you got it.
How about now?
Negative.
Not yet. Oh, yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. I just thought we'd take a minute to talk about how we got to here now. It's been, I think, a logical and an incremental process that council's worked through with staff. In 2018, 2020, we identified deficiencies and developed a master plan. So we really analyzed our entire system, culinary water system. came up with projects. Then in 2019, 2020, working with Zions Bank and our consultants, we developed rate studies for both monthly and impact fees. So fees for the existing system and impact fees, of course, for future development if it occurs. Then in 2020, we also council adopted new rates for those monthly and impact fees, including an economic pro forma for capital and O&M projects. And by the economic pro forma, I mean, we looked at when we would be able to use the system with money to get these projects done, because some of these projects are multi-million-dollar projects that just can't be done unless we saved up money for 4 or 5 years. Bonding is a method to get these projects done now. And as we develop the master plan, we know that some of these projects do need to be done now. So in that economic pro forma, it included the bonding in COVID 2020, which is what we're beginning tonight, even though it's fiscal year 2021. And if council approves this parameters resolution tonight, and then in 30 days, there's a public hearing as part of the parameters resolution. And then if we close the loan, what we would do is begin construction of these improvements between 2021 and 2023. And quickly what those improvements, so the purpose of this slide was just to show that we've been working at coming to this in a logical manner. We haven't really just said, hey, let's do some projects for the heck of it and try and borrow some money. And I know council knows that, but I wanted to make sure that those watching can see that as well. The investments that would be funded with this bond would be to replace well number 12, which is currently designed and permitted by the state. Construction will begin in spring of this year. Also, another project is system security and optimization, evaluation and upgrades, which includes of our wells. We need work on well houses to secure them. Our springs, the same. We have chlorination facilities, water tanks, and also an interconnect tie-in is envisioned with this money to tie in with Grand Water and Sewer Agency so that we can help each other during times of shortages. There used to be one, if it either failed or was turned off years ago, no one really knows why, but it would be part of this part of the package. Most of that design has not started. That begin in 2021. And construction, and some of it could begin in 2021 and continue each year as funds becomes available. And then the last part of these projects that would be funded would be the Mill Creek Drive waterline improvements. Design is complete, but it's been approved by Division of Drinking Water, and it would replace about 5,300 feet of water main, 10 and 12-inch main, some of which dates back to 1940. About half of it's 1940, and those pipes need to be replaced. The newer pipes are 1965 that would be replaced. And if bond's completed, we begin construction. We'll go out to bid immediately, construction in spring of 2021. And then the Spanish Valley water tank, which is needed to improve deficient fire flows and equalization storage. There was a study done back in 2017. The Drinking Water Board, we believe, will partially fund it. The money that we're asking for in this bond is to pay for our local cost share. Having been in contact with the Drinking Water Board staff, they think we want to be somewhere near the 50% local cost share for that. That's approximately what this is available for in this bond. If it's approved, then we'll go for spring. The June 2021 meeting is the meeting where we would go to the Drinking Water Board. And then if that funding is available, construction could begin in summer of 2022. So really, we cover storage projects, we cover collection projects, and we also cover source projects. So we really think this is a multifaceted way, working with Levi, our Public Works Director, on this, as well as with Zions. We believe this is a way to strengthen our water system in a way that it's been strengthened for a long time, and it needs it to be done. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I thank you for that, Chuck. And I just saw Karen's hand. So Go ahead, Karen.
Chuck, please forgive me if this is a really dumb question, but so for the Mill Creek water line improvements, so we're putting in about 1.9 to improve those lines. And then, 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about a zone upgrade, if they wanted to do something bigger, they'd have to pay for a water line connection or upgrade. It seems
Sewer.
like the impetus is like the Abbey subdivision. So I'm just curious, like, what is that our responsibility to?
So if I think I understand your question, this is our mainline system that brings water we come from the golf course wells and three piping systems. This is one of the piping systems. It's been failing for years, and it needs to be replaced to maintain the level of service that we have now. We're also upgrading a portion of it in response to what we think is anticipated growth. But when those new places, like Abbey subdivision as an example, comes on board, there are impact fees that they will pay to pay for their share of the upgrade, if that makes any sense, if that answers your question. Yeah. Whereas a single developer would do the same thing. And that was a sewer upgrade if you're talking about the zone, what we were talking about last week.
Okay.
Yeah, that's sewer, not water. I
was just curious, like what is the municipality's responsibility to, like, where does that lie?
In the mainline distribution system at the very least. And that's what this is mainline distribution to bring water in from the golf course to get it to town. The other end is around 400 east in the vicinity of Milts.
Yep.
About where this, and will tie into the larger part of the system that then goes out into the greater part of the city.
What Chuck's saying is this is ours.
Gotcha. No. And I'm just curious if that, like, where that responsibility lies.
And if it was a developer who was tying in and we had an old decaying line, the developer is not obligated to pay for the entire line for everyone who's used that system for 50 years. They're obligated to pay for any upgrade that's required for their use. So if it's a 4-inch line and it's a 60-year-old 4-inch line, we're on the hook to pay for our own 4-inch line that we've used and got all of our time out of. But if they need an 8-inch line, we pay for the 4-inch version, and then they pay for all the upgrades and everything. So they absorb all of the costs to get it to what we need it. We just pay what our share was for what our use is. We have an obligation to pay for our use as well.
And then Chuck, where does it stop? I mean, is it stopping at the stop sign of Mill Creek and Mill Creek, or is it going down through?
It'll go down Mill Creek up to Murphy Lane is where we'll tie in. So it'll go from about Milts up Mill Creek Drive up to the stop sign, then turn down Mill Creek Drive and go out to Murphy Lane.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's about a mile of water line. And we'll put in a couple of pressure release valves, which help improve our fire flows as well at either end of the project. One to replace an old one and another new one that's needed.
And if we recall a few months ago when we had all the breaks happening repeatedly, it was our pressure valves are going out. So this is an upgrade to those issues.
Yeah, and we'll also go up Powerhouse Lane and tie into the Powerhouse water tank and replace that old pipe there as well. Just for, make sure I was clear on that too. Yeah.
Okay, so the amount is before us, and I would entertain a motion from council, unless there are any other questions.
Ronnie has her hand up there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ronnie, go ahead. Apologies.
So Chuck, I wanted to thank you for responding to my questions, because I had some questions about why we went from 6 million to 7 and what this would cover and what it wouldn't cover in terms of the bond amount. So thanks, that was really helpful. The one outstanding question I had, and maybe this is, I don't know if this is more for you or Alex, but that I think I just didn't quite understand was in Section 19A3 of, I think it's probably the supplemental master plan. I have to look at how the pages work out. But anyway, it notes that the proceeds of the Series 2021 bonds shall be used to finance the Series 2018A project and the Series 2021 project. And that somehow confused me, because I thought the Series 2021 bonds were specific to these 4 projects. that we just talked about. So can someone explain to me what part of the Series 2018A project are these now 2021 bonds still going to help finance? Because that just confused me. I think there's something I don't understand about bonding.
I think that'd be an Alex or Darcy question.
Sure. And yeah, and let me just introduce Darcy Stevens, who's also on the line, and Randy, it looks like he's connecting as well. Randy Larson, who I think most of you know, has worked with the city as their bond counsel for several years. But anyway, Darcy, did you want to talk about that part of the it sounds like it's in the supplemental resolution?
Let me see. For those of you looking at our packet, it's on page 53 of the total packet, but give me a second and I'll tell you what section it's in. Let me see. Sorry, I'm trying to see the page where the supplemental master resolution starts. It's in the supplemental master resolution in Exhibit B, and it is in section 19.
Yeah, and while you're looking that up, the short answer, and perhaps Darcy or Randy could chime in as well, is the city, as I mentioned previously, has a 2018 bond that was issued under the water and sewer revenues as the source of collateral. And so these new bonds, these proposed 2021 bonds, would be on a parity basis to the 2018 bond, which means the bondholder, whether it would be Zion's Bank again, or somebody else for that matter, would have just as much right to their bonds being paid off with those available revenues as the previous bondholder that has the current 2018 bond. So that I believe is kind of a good summary of why that 2018 A bond would be implemented into the documents, merely based on the fact that it's now they have joint liens on those revenues. If that makes sense.
I think I understand parity. And I just got confused for a minute because I was like, oh, as a lay person reading this, did we somehow not bond enough for our 2018 project? And so, okay, thanks. Okay, that
right.
was.
Yeah, none of the proceeds of this new bond are going to be used for anything having to do with the 2018 bond. If that's
okay, so it's purely the parity and the right. Okay, all right, thanks.
Correct.
Any other questions, comments? I'd entertain a motion. Mike, you're just muted. So you just did that to make Karen feel better, didn't you?
Yeah, I can't keep track of it all. Yeah, here it is. I move to adopt resolution number 03-2021 of the City Council of the City of Moab, Utah, authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than $7 million aggregate principal amount of wastewater and water revenue bonds, Series 2021.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tawny. Any further discussion, deliberation among council? Okay, seeing none, I will call for the vote. Tawny.
Aye.
Kaylin.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Ronnie.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. And now on to 7-5, the proposed resolution 4-2021, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Moab, Utah, authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than $6.5 million aggregate principal amount of sales tax revenue bonds, Series 2021, and all related matters. So I just want to reiterate what Joel said earlier and what Alex illustrated as well, which is The 6.8 gets us what we need to complete. 6.5 gets us what we need to complete. 8.5 would give the threshold to be able to complete and roll in at a lower interest rate. And so that is for our consideration. And Caitlin, thanks for sticking around and joining us. I didn't know if you, as the project manager, had anything to share regarding this bond other than just to beg us to pass something so you have some money to build some stuff, right?
Yeah, well, we have some money right now with the Wahoo, but yeah, I don't have much to add. I think that Alex and Joel have done a great job talking a little bit about this already. And, you know, we've already had conversations with Alex about the sales tax revenue bond. So this will be to pay for phases 1 and 2 of the project, which totals right now as a budget under 6.4 million. And just as a brief update, I've been checking the numbers and we are still on schedule to be in budget for phase 1. Just as a brief update, so I feel confident in that number. But yeah, I think Alex and Joel have already touched on kind of where we're at with this.
Well, for what it's worth, I do feel comfortable with a buffer because of the pandemic. We are seeing an increase in numbers or an increase in prices in terms of construction related materials. Part of that is like workers not being able to work, factories having, you know, protocols that keep people kind of separated from each other. So so construction prices have gone up. Maybe they'll go back down, but it's definitely nice, you know, to know that we will have enough for our 2 phases with this amount. So council, I'm gonna lob the ball to you. How do you all feel about what's proposed and then this potential proposal of adding the 2 million? Karen?
So you guys, again, forgive me, but so I was under the assumption we were going for 80 units. And at the end of our packet, we talk about 42 units. So with this bonding, is that only for 42 units?
That's correct. Yes. So this bond will only be for phases 1 and 2. Phase 3 will be for the remainder of the units. And with that, we will be pursuing a construction loan, and we'll do that in a couple of years. So this bond is just to pay for phases 1 and 2 and upgrades to Walnut Lane and some of the other major infrastructure improvements. And then in a couple of years, when we're ready to pursue phase 3, we will pursue a construction loan through a different arm of Zions Bank.
Why wouldn't we pursue a bond or a bond refinance at that time, Alex?
Sorry, I was having a hard time unmuting there. We certainly could. We certainly could look at that. As we've been crunching the numbers, and Caitlin's done a nice job looking at that and doing most of the crunching. At this point in time, we felt like the capacity for coverage, if you will, not with respect to the sales tax, which is the source of security, that is well above what's needed to borrow 6.4 million or many millions above that. But what we do have to look at is the ability for the city to be able to repay the bonds, because they're not going to be, to my knowledge, using the sales tax revenues to repay the bond. The source of repayment is going to be based off of the revenues from the project. And in looking at that, I believe we came up with that $6.4 million number at this point in time, right, Caitlin? So as the project expands and more revenues come in, you know, we can revisit that and see what revenues would be available that would meet kind of the minimum requirement to borrow more money through a bond. But hopefully that kind of gives you a reason why, or an explanation.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And did I miss something on that, Caitlin?
I can just add a little bit more to that about, I agree with your comments, and I think that we talked about doing the two so that we could space out a little bit of the debt that the city's taking on, just in terms of debt payments annually. So we'll only be taking on this debt over the next couple of years as we're doing phases 1 and 2. And then this construction loan that we're looking at, while we're in construction, that will be interest only. And so we won't be taking on the full debt of this project until 5 to 6 years down the road. So it was a way to kind of balance, as like Alex is saying, we'll be paying back these loans and bonds with the revenue that we're getting from rent. And as new units are coming online and as rent is increasing a little bit, we'll be able to manage that a little bit better over time. So we decided to go this route and take on the sales tax revenue bond for a couple of years, manage that debt, and then be able to take on the construction loan at a later time when we're generating more income from rents.
Karen, I wanted to respond to your comment. So if we're looking at 8 million and we're dividing it by 42 units, we're looking at 190,000 per unit. And that's each unit carrying the debt of also the infrastructure that we have to do for the overall development of the parcel. So I know it seems like, gosh, that's so much, but honestly, with the cost of construction, a 2-bedroom unit is, to get a 2-bedroom unit or larger, because some of these units are, depending on size, that's pretty ballpark for the cost, for what it's worth. Ronnie?
Oh, I'm going to apologize if I missed something, but I know, like with the water bond, our estimated cost was 6.4 million, and due to the nature of construction costs, we're bonding for 7. And so I just want to make sure I understand the estimated cost on Walnut Lane is 6.4, and we did round that to 6.5. But is that high enough? I'm not an expert at these things. I know building a water tank is different than building housing, but can someone just tell me? Educate.
Yeah, I can touch on that as well. I think that Chuck and I had slightly different approaches to that. I think partially because we do have this Wahoo fund set aside, and since we are already spending money from the Wahoo on this project, we have a budget of 6.4, but we've already allocated some of that from the Wahoo. So I had a lower threshold for this bond than Chuck did, because we have that other revenue source to kind of offset those costs. Does that answer your question?
And then how much is in the Wahoo?
I think it's at like 1.4 million. That, Joel, I feel like that's the last number that we got from Clint when we met with him at the beginning of the month about this budget. It's 1.4.
So how much is in the Wahoo is a good question. The better question is how much of it's not already been allocated. 1.4 is in there, but in the contracts and everything we've been doing, will be used up by July with the architects and everything else that we're doing. So if we don't go forward with this bond on some level by July, will be the money at this point has been allocated all out of the Wahoo.
So far the money has just been used for design?
All kinds of stuff. Design, maintenance of trailers, repair, anything down there. It's all accounted for. We can provide all that, but it's not just design, not just the architecture. It's been all kinds of things down there.
There have been trailer removals. There's been
we pay a portion of Caitlin's wage out of those monies because that's allowed. We pay a portion of our maintenance person who's down there maintaining all the property out of that. We're paying our costs out of that as well.
And I would say, Karen, that the Wahoo hasn't been spent yet. It's more the Indie Dwell contract, which is about $1 million, has been allocated towards the Wahoo.
Exactly.
So we've only spent about $200,000 of that contract so far. So we haven't spent that money yet, but it's been allocated.
And that's what I was saying. It's what's been allocated. By July, it'll be on. It'll be spent.
Gotcha.
Okay, council, is somebody in a position to make a motion?
I actually have one more question, if I may.
Yes.
So Alex, maybe I missed this, but be patient. So with the water bond, are there limits to the city's revenues that are obligated to pay that? Are we just obligated to pay for it out of the water fees?
Right. So this bond, as well as the this proposed bond, as well as the two existing bonds that we talked about earlier, will all be secured by the water and sewer revenues of the city. However, it's my understanding, and Chuck could speak to this even better than I could, I think, is that the way that the city has budgeted for these bonds, this particular water bond would only require revenues from the water system. And Chuck talked about the study that was done and rate increases and so forth. So the reason why we usually tie both the water and sewer revenues together when we do this type of a project is just to enhance the security for the bond purchaser, which means the better security, the lower the interest rate. So it's in the city's best interest to secure it with both funds. However, like I mentioned, I think Chuck's done a good job in letting us know that this new bond is only going to be using water revenues of the city to pay it back, and that there's sufficient revenues to do so.
Okay. And is there a situation under which Zion's Public Finance would provide a bond for affordable housing project that wasn't secured by sales tax?
We looked at a few different options. In fact, we had, I know Caitlin and Joel and others were on conference calls with some gals in our ladies that work at Zion's that look at the affordable housing. The sales tax was certainly by far the least expensive by way of the interest rate because of the strong coverage that the city has with sales tax. So the other options didn't seem to fit with what the city's goals were as far as an annual payment. I think that if there's a need for more than the 6.4, there might be some other conversations that can be had with Zion's, but this certainly is the only option that seems viable right now.
Okay, thank you.
Motion, council?
So Mayor, are we trying, I mean, are we looking at doing a resolution to incorporate both?
Are we looking at doing the 8.5 instead of the 6.5?
Yes.
Well, I guess I just want to ask Alex, based on what you just said, like, is that an available amount to us? Because it certainly is a lower interest rate and would be more fiscally responsible to do the roll it together.
Yeah, and I would say yes, it is available, and the reason why is because, as Joel had mentioned, and as we've been talking, the 2 million, or it's really, I think the outstanding balance on the existing loan with Zion's is around 1.6 million because you have been paying it off over the last 2 years. That's already accounted for, and that was already looked at as we were trying to determine what could be afforded, I guess you could say. Now, if the city does decide tonight to amend that max parameter to, let's say, 8.5 to provide that as some flexibility if we combine the two, it certainly doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. It just allows us to have that conversation with Zion's Bank and to continue to look at that. It might be that we come back and only issue the $6.4 million bond for the new money, and we leave the other debt as is. I think it's, anyway, it's the city's decision on how they want to move ahead. If you did want to get that flexibility by increasing the par amount, I see that Randy Larson has, he is on the call, and I'd feel bad if we don't at least give Randy a second to say hello to the group. And I know that we'd have to direct him to change that parameter. So Randy, did you want to add anything to this discussion since you're on the phone here?
Sure. Thanks, and apologies that can you hear me okay?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Apologies for having to rejoin. Sad for you that you're still having to be in session, but I know that's how government works, is to have longer meetings. So apologies for my diversion coming back. Quickly, two things. With the water and sewer bonds, those are cross-collateralized, gives you the best interest rate, but you'll appropriately raise water fees for water projects. So what you budget for in your enterprise funds is completely separate from the collateral for the bonds. So as Chuck has described, he'll have water fees cover these bonds debt service, even though bond holders have a pledge for both. So the difference between collateral and budgeting is something that might be worth clarifying. Coming back to the sales tax and the motion, Mayor, I'm trying to catch up. So help me clarify, is if the motion were to be to increase to 8.5 million, would that be solely to give cushion for the projects, or would that be to encompass refunding some of the outstanding bonds?
To encompass refinancing the existing 1.6 that we carry that Zions carries on the same property.
Okay, so I'm happy to coach again for whoever may want to make that motion, but we would want to clarify then in the motion, if that's the council's desires, that we are increasing the par amount as described. And if you could also authorize bond counsel to make appropriate changes to the resolution to incorporate a refunding. We actually do refunding bonds under a separate law. And I won't bore you with all those details, but to make it easy for the council, it's just a two-part motion. It would be to amend the par amount to the 8.5 million, but similarly at the same time, authorize bond counsel to make changes to the resolution to authorize the refunding.
Randy, I'm just curious because 6.5 and 1.6 is actually 8.1.
Well, yeah, if it's not 8.5, that's just me doing bad math. If it's 8.1, whatever that would be.
Well, sorry, I was just going to say, Karen threw out the 8.5 as a number only because since we were rounding from the 6.4 to the 6.5, I knew that the original loan from Zions was 1.8, and so I just rounded it up another 2 million. So we take it to 8.5. I don't have in front of me exactly what is outstanding on the loan. I believe that the annual payment over the last 2 years has been about 123,000. So I'm just, let's just say that there's been 250,000 paid off, give or take, taking it from 1.8 million to actually then it would be 1.55. So if we want to get a little more detailed and trim that par amount, we certainly can. Again, even if we allow it to be 1.8, just to make sure that we're covering our bases, we would only issue the debt for the new project as well as whatever it would take to pay off the old debt. So that's why I'm using the 8.5.
And that's the point I wanted to make. It's the equivalent of being pre-approved for a home for 400,000, and then you go find your home for 350. They're not going to fund the 4, even though that's what you're approved for. They're only going to fund the 350. So when we're asking 8.5, we're getting approval to go up to that amount. If it's 6.5 and it's only 1.6 and the project's then only 8.1, the loan will only be for 8.1, even though you authorized to go up to 8.5.
Yeah. So this is council authorization, not like a final loan determination or bond determination.
And then.
But in our motion, you could also specify that, Karen, that it would be for the amounts of the cost of the project and the cost of including the outstanding debt for the purchase of the property.
Not to exceed 8.5.
But there's just going to be one bond issuance, and that's going to be soon, right, to capture the lowest interest rates possible. But then is it going to be known is it going to be a semi-firm estimate of the cost of phase 2 to base that on? Because that's part of what this bond is financing.
Yeah, this is Randy, council member. When you set the par amount at 8.5, then those are the outer parameters of the bonds. You'll be able to know exactly what you're refunding, right? Of what would absorb up to 8.5, whatever bonds we're refunding, and the date that is selected, we'll know exactly what that is. And then the balance would be issued for the project. Sounds like that may be 6.4, maybe 6.5. But you would between now and actually issuing the bonds need to lock down on the actual cost of the project, which is the unknown. The bond refinance will be known. That's a fixed amount. But you would be delegating to staff and management to basically work out the project cost along with the refunding somewhere underneath, certainly not more than 8.5 million.
Very sophisticated concept happening here tonight. Karen?
And then just quickly, just with a refinance, even though interest rates are lower and it sounds great, is there, Randy, or can you guys let us know? I mean, is there fees for refunding, and is there fees for, doing the refinance? I mean, sometimes it's more expensive to actually make a I don't think it's really called a refinance in this situation, but I mean.
Yeah, it would not be atypical. And if you wanted to, you could say that the refunding is conditioned upon generating savings. And that would include any closing costs related to it. I mean, Alex isn't going to recommend that anyways, but to give you comfort, absolutely, you could say, the refunding would only be done if it generated savings after cost of issuance. That would be common. That would be caught up into authorizing bond counsel to make changes to accommodate a refunding, as we would make that part of the parameter. Alex is going to do that anyways, but it's a good question.
Okay, so are we clear with the language of what how the motion shall be stated?
Oh, it's so clear.
Also, just real quick, Randy, I think you were saying, I think the language that you were suggesting for the motion, the only tweak that I would make is that, it's presented to us as a motion in our agenda at the 6.5. So it wouldn't be actually amending anything. It would just be proposing an alternate number.
Thank you. I agree. So proposing an alternate number and authorizing bond counsel to make changes to accommodate the refunding.
But it would be like, it wouldn't, you could just say the number as opposed to calling it an alternate number, council members, if that makes sense.
So I could do a move to adopt resolution, blah, 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 at not more than 8.5.
Yeah.
But I think what bond counsel is saying is that you would also need to authorize him to make, in your motion, you would need to state the new number, but also authorize him to make the changes for the refund.
That's what I was saying. So it's that and the, authorizing bond counsel.
Okay, I think I could do it.
I got a question before you go. So Alex, Randy, quick question. Is there any risk, this is a new thing, and I see what we're trying to do, minimize our own cost by refinancing at what we hope will be a lower rate. But is there any, if that rate doesn't materialize, somebody's going to make less money on here if it's lower interest rates and so forth. Is there any risk to us by by altering the motion as we're proposing here?
I don't believe. Go ahead, Alex.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't believe so, because we're going to pursue this as though we can try to get both the new money and the existing real property lease at a lower rate. If we're unable to do that and we're only able to get the new money at the interest rate that we're after and that makes sense, then that's all we're going to move ahead with. And so I think by giving the city flexibility, I don't view there being any risk in getting either of these things done.
Okay, so this doesn't bind us to reborrowing the same money at a potentially higher rate. It just gives us the option to do so if it's to our advantage. Is that right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, and even to add on that, Mike, this doesn't necessarily bind you. It doesn't bind the city to do a bond whatsoever. In fact, it won't be until after the public hearing and Randy and his group draft the closing documents and we finalize terms with what we believe to be the purchaser of Zion's Bank. And then the city signs the documents. That's when things will get finalized and the city's committed, is when we close on the bonds in sometime probably in April. So what's happening now is really just setting the stage to be able to move forward and proceed, but it really is not binding the city in any sense. And Randy, correct me if I'm wrong there.
No, you're right. And just to clarify, council member, is when you authorize me as bond counsel to make changes for the refunding, included in that direction will be the requirement that the refunding generates savings to the city. Alex and I represent the city. We have a fiduciary duty to you. We would be in violation of that if we recommended a higher interest rate to reborrow money just so that we could get some closing costs out of it. But at the same time, I will also add to the resolution for the refunding that the refunding would only occur to the extent it generated savings to the city.
Thank you. That helps.
You bet.
I feel like there was another comment before a motion, or are we motion ready? We're ready for the motion. Entertaining Karen.
I move to adopt resolution number 04-2021 of the City Council of the City of Moab, Utah, authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than 8.5 aggregate principal amount of sales tax bonds, series 2021, and authorize the bond council to refund the existing real property lease and finalize the terms that that benefit the city. Can I say that?
Yeah, I would if you'd allow, you can just confirm this, council member, but I would say authorize bond council to make adjustments to the resolution to accommodate the refunding, and such refunding to be only authorized so long as it generated savings to the city. If you were open to that clarification, you could just say, as he said.
As Randy Larson said.
Thank you for that eloquent motion. Is there a second?
Okay.
One second.
Thank you, Tawny. Any final discussion or deliberation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Ronnie.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Kaylin.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Tawny.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Caitlin, for sticking around, and Chuck also for sticking around. You are dismissed from class. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
I missed the
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Section number 8, approval of bills against the city of Moab. Tawny, is there a motion? You are muted.
Shoot.
It's contagious.
I move to pay the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $107,000, $107,655.58.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ronnie. Let's see. All those in favor, Tawny,
Aye.
Kaylin,
Aye.
Ronnie,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Section 9, adjournment. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Mike. Second.
Okay.
Karen, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you for a good meeting tonight. Everyone have a good, safe night. See you
Good night.
later.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff.